What if the biggest lever for transforming manufacturing wasn't new machines, but how people feel at work? Welcome to Industry Ignited, the podcast where we explore the leaders driving transformation across industry and manufacturing. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar, and today I'm joined by Andrew Patrick, CEO of Eckert Machining Incorporated. Andrew is a senior manufacturing executive with more than 2 decades of experience in the Silicon Valley supply chain. Andrew, welcome to Industry Ignited.
Thank you, Leanne. I'm pleased to be here.
I look forward to diving right in. Now, I know you spent decades in Silicon Valley working with some of the most demanding manufacturing customers in the world. How did that environment shape your leadership philosophy?
Well, I think it began a long time ago, and I was fortunate enough to have a mentor, and not everybody gets that good fortune. And I began learning from that person, and they had a vision for their company, which was centered around getting the best out of people. And they had a lot of ideas in that arena. And that got me started. And they used to take me to a lot of basic leadership classes, one-day seminars at some hotel ballroom and those kinds of things. And they were very popular at the time. That was all before, online training and all that kind of thing. So you had to go in person. And from there, you begin to meet people and network and exchange ideas. And you find some people who have been very successful, and you invite yourself over and go and learn from them. And we began to see a change in our results by using tools to create a sense of teamwork. And that's where it all started, really. And that was back in 1990.
Okay, so what types of tools were you, finding?
I would call them classic tools. Things like understanding Tuckman's group dynamics theory, which a lot of people know as forming, storming, norming, and performing. And it's very well known, but it was Tuckman put that together, I think, in the mid-60s sometime. So these days, there are updated versions by other academics that people get to see and learn from if they're doing leadership courses, whether it's university or a local college or even a one-day class. But Tuckman is where it all started, and having that understanding that as you begin to lead a team, you're going to go through those 4 stages. And later on, Tuckman added a 5th stage called reforming. But as you go through it, you'll recognize them, forming, storming, norming, and performing. And in the beginning, it's a honeymoon period. Everybody's great. The new manager, new supervisors here, wherever your role is. And then after a while, they're like, who is this person? Why do we need them? And you get into the storming. So as you work your way through those stages, you begin to shape the team. So that's one of the tools and one of the easy to recognize phases that you will go through. And then there's probably the most widely accepted theory on human motivation taught in universities coast to coast and around the world is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Underutilized and not fully understood by leaders, it's the most powerful tool for engaging your people and delivering a high energy team focused on the results. The basics of it are pretty simple. It's about creating a recognition, people to feel like they're seen, they're heard, that their contribution is valuable and appreciated. It's about creating a respectful environment and a sense of accomplishment, which is very, very powerful. Whether it's an athlete winning a race or a front desk person being recognized for great customer service, anybody that feels a sense of accomplishment and a sense of recognition begins to feel motivated. So if you combine that with Tuckman and maybe an understanding of McGregor with his XY theory, and you begin to understand the path to change to create that cultural shift from a team that's maybe not fully engaged to a team that's highly motivated and wants to deliver results and doesn't need a lot of supervision.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that when you first started, you were really taken under the wing of some
Yeah.
mentors, and that they led you, they got and introduced you to some of these, frameworks of organizational performance and also human behavior, which then you were able to combine to really gain an understanding of what motivates people.
Yeah, so and it was all new to me at the time. So I mopped it up like a sponge. And having a mentor making you feel okay with learning these new things and and being a beginner and trying to put them into practice and being allowed to make mistakes. And when you feel that from your mentor, who's also the owner of the company and my manager directly, that shapes your philosophy. And then you put that in your pocket and you take it with you, and which I did in my later career, and you bring it out to help other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So it's really starting with a strong foundation and being taught by someone who's been there and done that and really can give you good
Mm-hmm.
direction,
Mm-hmm.
as well. And then those things you can draw from, later on in your career as you're actually leading teams and guiding people and motivating people.
Well, when I look back and reflect upon that period, Leanne, we had a lot of competitors. We were serving the same few giant customers, and we would sometimes find ourselves sitting in the same room with them at a customer symposium. And we'd see their results displayed on the screen next to ours, and we would hear them talk, and we would even socialize with them after the meeting. And we could sense, we kept it to ourselves, but we could sense the huge gap between their performance, and we could see it in the numbers and ours. And we thought the only difference was how we managed our workforce, how we developed our team. We all had the same equipment and the same opportunities, but our results were outperforming them by some distance. And so we didn't shout about that because we didn't want them to copy what we were doing. They were the competition.
Right. Okay. So you identified pretty readily what it was an advantage and
Well,
in
it was.
operations. So it was giving you
It was.
a differentiator. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a competitive advantage, one we kept to ourselves, and those types of things weren't so believed in at the time. There was, well-known books out at that time, like Good to Great and so on. I forget the author on that one, but not a lot of managers were reading this stuff and applying them in our industry. And they seem to belong to bigger, sexier, grander industries. But my mentor, for some reason, he thought that was the way to go. And we had the pleasure of seeing it work for ourselves. And it reinforced our commitment that, yeah, this works.
Right. Awesome. So, Andy, what first drew you into operational excellence, not just in systems, but in people and culture?
Well, the need was driven by the customers at the time. They had very demanding expectations, and some of the suppliers considered them unrealistic. But that wasn't our approach. Our approach was, sure, it's difficult, and systems alone won't get us there, because unless you've got the enthusiastic support of, hundreds of employees, you're simply not going to be able to achieve these extraordinary expectations of the customer. We had seen some success with our engagement policies and development of our teams and trying to raise that enthusiasm and that commitment to excellence. And so we combined that with well thought out manufacturing systems, quality control systems, and a marriage of the two was that enabled us to achieve exceptional results. And our customers recognized it. And therein was the competitive advantage that lifted us above our competitors.
Okay. Yeah. And I know you really became known as the go-to leader for transforming large machine shops. What patterns did you see consistently in struggling organizations?
Good question, that one. It's because there is a pattern to that. And now that I've been doing this for quite a few decades, I recognize those patterns, and they're very common. And the first thing that stands out when I would go into a new organization was management unity was always a concern. And recognizing that within the team, there might be 10 key leaders, that they're not necessarily all rowing the boat in the same direction. And they have their own ideas, philosophies, and sometimes they're in conflict. And so the message to the greater team, hundreds of employees through the main set of leaders, is inconsistent. And therefore, it's reflected in the culture, the adherence to systems, and that's where you get average performance at best. And if your customers demand excellence, you've got to take that on. You've got to do something about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm really hearing it starts at the top, though. So there needs to be that unity at the top. So you're going in the same direction. You're leading the team with consistency and unity. And then from there, it's being able to manage and communicate effectively. And so you're passing down the same message. So it's not like, kids go to mom and then she says no, and then they'll go to dad and then, to try to get a different answer. You need to be on the same page is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. I think that's step one. If you go into an organization and you're charged with changing it, and let's face it, when a CEO or a general manager or a senior executive is hired, that's often what the expectation is. They're going to come in, they're going to improve things, which means change. And step one on that journey is creating management unity. And when you first get there, you start to go through that forming, storming, norming, and performing. You hold a few meetings and start to share your message, which you have to do constantly and consistently, and not just verbally, but through your actions as well. Because only actions make believers out of people. So you start with that high-level management team, and your first job is to create unity there. Until there's unity there, you won't see much progress in the rest of the organization. Until all your senior managers are going out and rolling out the same message that you're rolling out to them. Until that happens, and until their behavior is in alignment with that, not just their words, you will not see the shift you want to shift. So the step one is to create that management unity. And sometimes in the worst case scenarios, you've got to make changes there. And there will be casualties sometimes. You hope not, and you hope you can convince everybody that this is the way forward. But sometimes there's an informal leader in the room that once outside of the room is quick to say, I don't know who this person is, but we don't need them. We were doing just fine before they got here. But the truth is often they weren't doing fine, and that's why you were called in. But, these are the things you've got to go through, and that forming and forming.
Yeah. So is it really an exercise in getting in alignment with mission, vision, and values within the organization first?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I hear you. And I take the same approach in consulting and working with customers on the marketing side even as well, because that messaging needs to be consistent in every effort. And there's got to be alignment. Yeah. Exactly. Now, looking back, what experience most prepared you for leading large-scale cultural change?
Well, I think it goes back to the beginning that we talked about earlier, going through that and being lucky enough to have a mentor that supported me when I made mistakes. And it's very common when you make mistakes that somebody's waiting, your own boss is waiting to point it out to you and condemn you for your mistakes. So then you pull back. Now you're operating from a point of fear, which we find at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. And if you're in that bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy, you will be ineffective. You'll be afraid to make decisions, afraid to take action. And decisions have to be made. And once you start to be fearful of that, you become ineffective. So for me, it goes back to being lucky enough to have an experience where I had a leader behind me supporting me. And when there was a mutiny early on in the storming stages, he stood right by my side. And that sent a message to everybody. This guy's going nowhere. And he's doing a good job. I'm standing by him. And the rest of you better stand by him. So you got to get that message out there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you came in strong with a new messaging saying these are the changes we're going to make, and you actually had a mutiny or people inside just resisting change, saying we're not going to. We don't. I mean, did you end up having to let people go because of that, or were you able to shift mindset?
Well, you've got to be mindful of not being a bully, and anyone can be assertive. It's not hard. Really, you're looking to be persuasive, and so when you've invested some time in that, and you can see you've got somebody that's so toxic, there's nothing you can do. Yes, you need to manage them out of the business. And when you do, because everybody else knows they're toxic, they're just waiting for you to show your mettle. When you do replace that person, you will get a round of applause and people will be hailing, it's about time.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, during your turnaround of TC Industries of Europe, profits quadrupled with no capital investment. What was the first cultural shift that unlocked that result?
Well, I can remember it to this day. We started having regular team meetings with everybody that was in a leadership role. And I was taken aback by the reaction of this because they had never had a team meeting in 20 years. In 20 years, they'd never had a team meeting. So
how big was your organization? What was the
250 people? There was about 10 people in leadership roles. None of them had any training. None of them knew how to discipline, how to coach, how to motivate. They had no skills in that area. It was a classic case, and you read about this everywhere, of somebody's a really good welder, put them in charge. Somebody's a good machinist, put them in charge, etc., etc. And so that person is not equipped to be in charge. And they're better off as their best welder. Just because someone's your best welder doesn't mean they're the best person to be in charge of that department. You need a people person. And so we threw ourselves into having regular team meetings and beginning to work on basic understanding of leadership roles, the behavior that's expected of you as a leader. So we began to share that. And in the beginning, people sat in a meeting and just did not speak. And it was a shock to me. There was only one room in the building that could be turned into a meeting room. It was full of junk, so we had it all cleared out and cleaned it up, got whiteboards up, etc., etc. Did all those things, so it was a good meeting space, and then began to deploy those meetings. And in the previous manager that had been there for a long, long time, he would, no disrespect to him, of course, but he would show up for work at 9 a.m. Well, the shop started at 6. So when I started to show up at 6 to see how the day started, people were surprised to see me. What are you doing here? You're the manager, you know.
Right.
And yeah, so I would get there early, engage with people, walk around the shop floor, say good morning, greet people, and just lift the mood. You know, sometimes it's as simple as that, but you've got to be sincere.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get
Right.
to know the key people in the factory, and who because there's always influential people who are informal leaders, but they have a lot of influence. And if you win those people over, if you earn their respect, then they begin to give it back, and they're out there. And when somebody starts to say, well, I don't know about this new person, they're there to represent you, and they will if you've earned their respect. So the first cultural shift was taking the leaders, and again, it goes back to management unity, recognizing what their skills gap was and beginning to put in place training to close that gap. And as we closed that gap, they became the force multipliers, because now they're going out enthused with their new skills and starting to deploy their skills. It has a positive effect on their people who are now being treated right. So their people then start to show up for work thinking, you know what, this place is not so bad after all, and I think I could do a better job.
Yeah. So really modeling the culture is what I'm hearing. Going there, and managing the attitude and showing them that you'll show up, and then just really supporting and being the example is what I'm hearing for the other
Well, I
leaders
think
as well.
setting the example, Leanne, is probably the most important role of a leader. And showing up at 9 and leaving at 4:30 and expecting to deliver change is not going to happen. When you're delivering change, you will be busy for your normal 50 hours a week, and you've got to have the energy above and beyond sustaining the current state to deliver the new state. So if you expect to deliver change, you are going to have some energy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you spoke a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Tell me more about how you apply that framework practically inside of a manufacturing environment.
I think you have to recognize where people are at. If it's the type of environment where it's a point and blame regime, where when something goes wrong, the management team is quick to find somebody to shove the blame on, the whole team will be living in that lower level of fear for their job and trying to be invisible and stay off the radar. But if you start to recognize people when they do something right, and it can be simple things, you can go out and shake somebody's hand and say, I appreciate that you stayed late last night. We really needed that job. And if you're seen to do that kind of thing, little things that begin to lift people up and begin to move people in the right direction, and then do some other simple things, like get a list of everybody's birthday and send them a card on their birthday from the manager saying, really appreciate your work this year so far. Thank you. Enjoy your birthday. And then send some flowers, send a gift. They're little things that don't cost a lot, but it begins to create a recognition in the culture. And then going back to TC Industries, never had a Christmas party of any kind whatsoever. And in UK culture, Christmas is very important. So we did that. And in that party, we had a presentation for employees of the year in different departments. And that people began to get interested in that. And, hey, Dave just got this award. That's really nice. Look at that. Got a plaque. He got a small bonus and he got a day off. And that recognition began to introduce that. Now, one of my favorite stories early on at TC Industries was we purchased some $200 gift certificates, which was a new idea for that environment. And I asked the shop floor senior manager, I said, hey, if you find somebody doing something you think is pretty good, please let me know about it. And so he came in on the Monday morning after a weekend, and we'd had a shift in on the weekend. Said, Andy, this maintenance guy, Steve, was in on the weekend, and he found a fault with the machine and needed a new electrical motor. He went and borrowed a motor from a machine that was no longer being used, switched them out, got production back up and running, and the next thing you know, we were back in business. I said, go get him right now. So, of course, he goes out to grab Steve. Steve's been living in this blame and punish culture, and he tells Steve, hey, why don't you come and see the new manager, Andy? So what's Steve thinking?
He's like, oh no, what did I do? Yes.
So he came into my office full of bravado, giving me the alpha dog look. And I said, hey, Steve, I hear you were in on Saturday and you did this, this, and this, and you changed this motor out. And he's looking at me being Mr. Tough Guy. Yeah. Well, so what if I did? Waiting to be blamed for something. I said, well, I just want to shake your hand and say thank you. I have a small gift certificate for you. I really appreciate what you did. And he looked at me and he said, Andy, I have never been treated this way before. And he had tears in his eyes. And this is absolutely a true story. And so those little things begin to shift the culture. So he's now out there and people know what happened. And they begin to recognize that, hey, we're being treated with respect, finally. Mm-hmm. And there was over a period of time, Leanne, it wasn't quick. There was a shift in culture. And productivity at that factory was measured by per person. And there was a long-established metric. And it began to rocket up the scale. There were 4 companies in this company. There were 4 sites, 2 in Canada, 1 in the US, and 1 in the UK. And the one in the UK just began to outstrip the others in terms of productivity. And the owner of these companies was puzzled. And he said to me, and this was very revealing, he said, what's going on over there? I said, well, we're focused on the culture. We're shifting the culture. And he said, Andy, culture to me is going to the ballet. I said, no, there's a culture within the company. And it's not always a good one, but there's always one there. And we've been shifting ours, and that's why you're seeing a better result.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it's taking, that fear-based culture, like you said before, where people are expected to be blamed and shamed and finger pointing and accused, and shifting that into a culture of acknowledgement, of gratitude, of thanking people, and where they feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. And then from there, they feel more motivated to perform because they know that there's something in it for them, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. You can weave recognition into the culture. You can't do it overnight. Nobody believes in you when you first get there. But you start with your words. You have team meetings. You state what the vision is and what the values are, as you mentioned earlier. And you let people know your compass is pointing in that direction. Now, at that point, in that forming stage, nobody believes you. Nobody thinks you're sincere. And it's only your actions over time will convince people that you're sincere. So you got to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the person that's showing up and doing that welding job, that machining job. You've got to be able to look at their work environment, whether or not it's a good environment physically. Are lights fixed? Is equipment repaired? Are you giving this person a very difficult task because you give them very poor equipment and very poor physical organization of their work area? Show that you care. Get out there and address those issues. Make sure it's important in the world of the maintenance department to take care of the equipment for the people trying to do the work for you. Mm-hmm. Send those messages through your actions.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, like how much time does it take for people to trust and believe that the change is real?
Well, every situation you go into is different, is unique. The patterns might be the same, but the strength of resistance will vary. I've been in situations, and again, these are just war stories, but they're true, where I'll tell you another quick story. Early on at this one particular company here in Silicon Valley, I was very unwelcome there, but I just stuck to the plan, repeat the message, show through your actions, etc. And I started work there right before a company picnic that they had every year, and they had a dunk tank. And so different people were getting on the seat, and 2 or 3 people would throw balls to knock them into the water. And then I got on the seat, and the line suddenly went round the block. And that tells
Wow.
tells you how people feel about your arrival, and that they don't want you there at that point. And as a leader, this is where you've got to have courage of your convictions, and you can't take it personally. You represent change. People don't want you there. So the amount of resistance varies. You may go into a company that's been on the path to change, they're struggling, they just want some help, and you might transform that place in less than 2 years. But if the resistance is strong, it's going to take you 2 years plus to overcome that. And it's not about the size of the company, it's the existing culture that you take on to work with.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, resistance to change is inevitable. I think it's part of human nature, especially if people are used to doing certain things a certain way. They have their comfort level and their patterns. And so how do you move leadership teams from who are you to true alignment and trust? What else can you do?
I recommend, like we've talked about a little bit, you start out with your words, you meet regularly. You're consistent and constant with the message. What's the vision? What are the values? And you uphold them through your example. So you cannot be afraid to engage with somebody who's not taking you seriously and have some one-on-one time with them. Follow up and make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Uphold the standards, make the standards clear, publish them, find ways to measure things, and start out on that path. And keep in mind your words. Let's repeat this message because it's probably the most important part. Your words are not enough. Only your actions will make believers out of people. Your words never will. But once you get past that point and people begin to believe in you, then it becomes easier and you can pull back and you'll be doing more management by walking around instead of having to drive the change. And the people that you've developed and trained and sent to training and brought in leadership coaches and so on and so forth, those people then will be acting as your force multipliers and be out in the greater population and converting the population to a highly motivated and recognized workforce that will deliver exceptional results.
Right. Oh, yeah. And you emphasize, okay, it's not just words, it's action. So tell me more about what actions you can take. So it's like leadership training, providing training. It's, showing up, being the example. What are other actions that might drive that change?
Well, something I remember that's always intrigued me, and I don't necessarily have an answer to this, but I noticed that when I've been the person delivering the change and I stand up and I've got some training material I've developed myself and so on, and I'm proud of it and I'm putting it into use and I'm meeting with the team, and I can see it's a struggle getting them to believe in what I'm saying, that what I'm sharing with them will have an effect. But if I find a third party that I think can do the job and I bring them in, for some reason, it's a different dynamic, and they will listen to this third party and believe them rather than believe me. So then I have to come around with the actions to support what the third party has taught. So if you bring in a third party to do a 1-day or a 2-day class on leadership, and you support that and you provide the time and the right environment for that training, and you make sure people aren't running out of the training because they've got a fire to put out, you go and stand in for them. Those are behavioral actions that you can take, set an example that show that you're serious about this training, you're serious about this shift in expectations, and that you will stand by your leaders. So when your leaders now, because you send them back out into the greater population, and now they're going to meet resistance to change because people know them, have known them for a while, and they may say, well, Mark, you've never expected this from me before. Why are you expecting it now? stop being a jerk. And then Mark or the leader, whoever it is, whatever their name is, they've got to stand their ground and they've got to show that they've shifted. And there's now that professional distance that before they never had that. They may have worked as trying to get compliance by being friendly or over friendly or friends even with the people they're trying to lead. And we've learned over thousands of years from the military, there's got to be a little bit of a professional gap between you and the team that works for you.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You can't be their best friend. You've got to show up as the leader.
So when these newly trained leaders go out to try their tools, and they, of course, meet their own subculture, you're trying to shift the whole culture. They're now engaged in their subculture and their own battle. And so they meet that forming, storming, norming, and performing resistance. And now they're trying to get to the norming. They're trying to get people to understand this is the new norm, that this supervisor, I'll call him Mark because I've got somebody in mind, is now going to act in a different way. And he's going to expect different things from you. And he's going to hold you accountable, but he's also going to stand by your side. So when that supervisor meets that resistance, when Mark meets that resistance, I've got to go out and stand by his side and show that Mark has my full support, up to and including disciplining somebody if they turn out to be toxic and will not let go of their resistance. I'm a big believer in giving people time to adapt to the change. I'm not a fan of throwing everybody out really quickly, but I am a fan of investing time to convince people and motivate people this new direction is for everybody's benefit.
Yeah. So you give them the opportunity, but if it's just not working, then you've got to draw the line somewhere because it's going to hurt the culture in general. Yeah. And so with this leadership, what role does recognition and the psychological safety really play in driving real performance and not just compliance?
Well, I think if people look in the leadership mirror and question themselves how they feel when they get recognition. If you're overseeing a project and it's very difficult and you've got lots of resources to coordinate, and somehow you deliver the project and it meets expectations and you get recognized, boy, do you feel good. So you should remember that feeling. And that's the feeling you want to create in your team as individuals and collectively. So you've got to find ways to do that. We are all different people. And you may find somebody that not everybody will react the same way to everything you try to do. So you may find that you've got certain individuals that value a different kind of recognition. And it might be that you quietly, out of sight of everybody, shake their hand and say, I saw what you did. That was fantastic. Good job. That was very difficult. And other people that thrive on that recognition being in front of everybody. So I would expect you are having regular team meetings on your shop floor. You do have visual management. You are getting around those KPIs, talking about them, and giving recognition to those people that are shifting the numbers. And engage people emotionally in wanting to improve those numbers. Now, keep in mind this little gem I learned 100 years ago, that every one of us, although we're all different, we have some things in common. And one of those things is an emotional bank account. So as a leader, if you're always making a withdrawal of that emotional bank account, pretty soon you're going to move that person down to Maslow's lowest level of motivation, fear, and a lack of safety and security. Now, if you recognize that emotional bank account, make some deposits. The more deposits you put in there, the better that person feels. And your job as a leader is to move them up that hierarchy of needs. That's where you will begin to see a shift in performance. So I don't know if I answered your question. I sometimes get off on a tangent, but the same patterns repeat themselves again and again.
Yeah. Well, I think just reinforcing to leadership that it's important to acknowledge and even, I guess, thank your team members to make sure that they are feeling empowered and they feel like they're making a contribution, not just there to produce results for the company, but that they do have value as actual people in the organization.
And you can ask yourself, Leeanne, how you feel when you get recognition or you take on a difficult task and somehow you have success and somebody recognizes you for it. You feel good. That's a universal human thing. It doesn't matter what country you're from, what your background is. If you get recognition, you feel good.
Yeah, I like that. Now, I know you combine people-centric leadership with Six Sigma, Lean, and APICS practices. How do you balance human engagement with data and discipline?
Oh, boy, you ask tough questions. I think when you start to deliver change, and we talked about how you want to create management unity. So it's not just the soft skills, the recognition, and so on. It's also measuring business performance. So I think that there's two skill sets that are needed. One is management. So that management is measuring the performance, doing the right things to improve those numbers or understand why they're not where they should be. And then the other one is the leadership skill set. So sometimes called the soft skills, but certainly not easy skills. And that's where you want to deliver training on people management, but also training on understanding the system. So along the way, the goal might be to empower people, but empowerment without training will just be chaos. It will just be anarchy. So you want all these tools are important, whether it's just in time or APICS, which is American Production and Inventory Control Society. So that's all about production management and control, what orders to release, when, where, and how. And so you want good systems in all these areas of the business, and you want to be able to measure the results, find the holes, find the gaps. In my mind, that's management. And then the leadership, you have to bring the people and engage them in those good management practices. So that's how you combine the two together. And if you do that successfully, and if you use some basic things that trigger human emotion, like visual management, for heaven's sake, don't put all your graphs and charts and everything on a computer and email them to each other, because that just will not work. Get them out on a visual board somewhere where people can see them and you can stand around them, you can engage with them, which they do in lean manufacturing. All of these tools that we're talking about today are the precursor to lean. Before lean, there was just in time and a combination of things over the years. And now we have the lean manufacturing toolbox, which emphasizes visual management. So those lessons learned from the Toyota way, etc. Today, they all find themselves into the lean manufacturing toolbox. And in the lean manufacturing toolbox, there is a segment all about engaging people. So I encourage anybody listening to this to put just as much emphasis into the leadership development and to understand there's a difference between leadership and management, and to make sure managers can also be leaders. And that's how they'll bring together the people side of the culture and the technical side of the culture. Because you can't, a hope is not a strategy. You've got to measure your results. It's still
True.
business.
Yeah, that's true. Now, you've spoken about capability maturity matrices and multi-generational project plans. Why are these tools so effective for sustained improvement?
Well, I would say that both tools are important to understanding the current state. You've got a current state when you go in somewhere, or when you've been somewhere for a while. If you want to start to deliver change, you've got to understand the current state. So if you can take all the key elements of that current state and create a multi-generational project plan or a visual ladder of some kind, and score 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, 1 being in need of serious help. And if you can be honest about that, display that, and engage people in that, and get people, and this is very hard to do, get people to agree where you're at. Are you a 1, a 2, a 3, and that you want to be a 5, and how are you going to get there? And create a roadmap to go from your current state to the desired future state, and get people engaged in that and review it often. That's part of engaging people in the process of delivering excellence. And if you can tap into their emotions, as well as making it a clear, easy to understand visual management tool, you have something. Now, the tough part is when you first say, where are we at? Everybody will think it's a 4 or a 5, because that's the standard that's been set. What we do is already good enough. But if you're honest with yourself and you can describe in technical terms what a 5 is, and you know you're not there, and you've got to convince the team, no, we're not a 5. And usually people are offended by that. And that's where you're in the storming stage. And it's very difficult to deliver that message. What do you mean we're a 2? We've been a 5 for years. We never had these problems before.
So it feels like an insult. It's a personal attack,
It is, because people are proud of what they've done. And if
Sure.
anyone's to blame, it is the previous management team for setting the bar so low. That people feel
Interesting.
good about achieving a high bar. It's
Of
just like
course. Yeah.
when you watch an athlete that wins a race, that's a high bar, and they've just won, and it's clear that they've won. If you follow a sports team and they're finishing in 5th or 6th place, you're not shouting, "We're number 6, we're number 6." But if you win the championship, wherever it is, you're quick to shout, "We're number 1." And you want your team to shout, "We're number 1." Don't set
Right.
that bar too low. Don't make that mistake.
Yeah. However, I mean, I know you mentioned before, like if you empower people without like leadership, it can actually fail. So why does empowering people often fail when organizations try to implement it?
I think sometimes somebody at the top attends a seminar or something, or they somehow come across this idea of empowerment and quickly release the concept of empowerment to their managers and expect them to empower people to make decisions, etc., etc. And the concept is right. But if you have that empowerment before you've prepared the environment for it and the culture for it, you simply get people going in multiple directions. What's a good decision to one is not a good decision to another. And you create more conflict, more storming. And that's definitely not what you want. So before you release that empowerment, focus on the things we've already talked about. Get the culture right, get management unity, get good systems going, and weave that into the fabric of the culture. Empowerment then becomes a natural output of creating that culture. And you don't have to specifically go after empowerment. If you do the right things as a leader, if you train, develop your team, if you put in place good systems that are easy to follow, you will see that empowerment take place all on its own. And then as a leader, you've just got to make sure you're not there criticizing or being overbearing for every little decision that's made. And if sometimes a decision is wrong, stand next to that person and own their mistake for them and make them feel free to make another one. Because it's very rare that they will make a mistake once you've got good systems and people feel empowered.
Okay, so you're saying empowerment is more of a byproduct. So it's
Yes.
really, focusing on the leadership and the management, putting in good practices and
Absolutely.
training. And okay, I like that. Now, what indicators tell you that a culture has truly shifted and that change is now self-sustaining?
These are war stories, but true stories. To TC Industries of Europe, for instance, in those early stages, especially that storming stage, and when the shop was empty, believe it or not, I would wander into the men's washroom and look at the graffiti. Andy's got to go, and this jerk doesn't know what he's doing, and you can imagine what else.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
then at some point, down the road, way after a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and we had a fresh coat of paint put in there, and the graffiti never came back. And that tells you that you've won respect. Now, I'm not saying everyone can do that. That's not really a tried and true method, but it is a true story. So some of the more practical things are, for example, in TC Industries Europe, one of the things that struck me when I got there was there was a lot of missing time. And over 12% of the time, people did not show up for work. Now, 2 years later, we were still measuring that same metric. And for a period of 1 year, nobody missed any time for any reason whatsoever. Zero, zilch, squat. And that tells you people are waking up in the morning and looking forward to going to work. The reason there was a 12% absenteeism rate is people just didn't want to go. They hated it. They're only going because they need the paycheck. They've got families to look after, mortgages to pay. So they've got to drag themselves into work. And so when you shift that culture and people are coming into work and you're greeting them with a smile on your face, you're there before them, you shake hands, you're a goofy kind of leader walking around smiling, singing, making people
Having
feel,
fun.
yeah, having fun. And
Yeah,
why should everybody have fun? That doesn't mean we're irresponsible or
absolutely.
not productive. Attendance is always a good one to measure. And then there should be productivity measures. And if you see those start to shift through the culture and through good systems, That's a measurement that you're going in the right place, the right direction. And turnover is a good one. Turnover is not so easy to understand because sometimes it may be an environment where there aren't a lot of opportunities in the local area. So people are stuck going there. It's hard to find another job. So you have to consider that when you're measuring turnover. And so if you're measuring attendance at the same time and attendance is improving and turnover is about the same, you're probably doing the right things. But then in other environments like Silicon Valley, there are jobs everywhere, but good jobs are hard to come by. So create an environment where people want to come to work, that they feel greeted, welcome, appreciated, then you will lose less people. And in Silicon Valley, people are always knocking on the door offering your employees a couple more dollars an hour. So it's not so easy.
Yeah. Now, after years of turning around other companies, you bought Eckert Machining yourself. How has ownership changed your perspective on leadership?
It's brought home the reality that you've got to watch the financial numbers too, and that you need financial success sometimes. So you've got the financial engine to allow you to do the things you want to do with your people. For example, investing in training, this costs money. Employees aren't at work when they're training, those kinds of things. So that figures into your thinking a bit more. It's a business, whether it's 300 employees, 500 employees, or 10 employees, you've got to make money so you can invest in people. And the ownership part of this brought that home to me. And there's been, I've experienced ups and downs with that. Everything's not a bed of roses, and leadership is hard work. And it's not easy. So the reason you find it hard to find good companies to work for is because leadership's not easy, and people often take the easy path. And the easy path is blame and punish and hire someone else and fire somebody because you didn't like what they did. It's much harder to go out and be supportive, put in place the right things, invest in people, and create the culture you want, and really invest in people. Be sincere about that. Spend money on the training, send them to a class, invest in their technical skills and technology understanding. So it's, from a leadership point of view, it just brought home the reality of the importance of having money. The right things to do are still the right things to do. That doesn't change.
Right. And I mean, it might be harder in one sense, but on the other hand, I mean, it's hard to hire people and find good people, and it's very expensive to hire, and turnover is expensive, and it takes a lot of time away from a company and productivity. So on the other hand, if you're not investing in that, then you're paying for it in that way.
Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom in what you say. Sometimes these things that we talk about in these types of meetings, they're not secrets. You know, it's common knowledge. There are dozens of books on leadership, and leadership is probably the most difficult thing to write about. And so you see these things, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's in a book, or wherever you see them. So it's not hidden knowledge, but finding companies that deploy these things, that's what's rare. So you can find a job, but can you find a good job? So, and that's the difference. Yeah, you might jump ship for a little bit more money or a lot more money, but you may get there and find the reason they're paying you a lot more money is because it's an abusive environment and they expect you to take it. Those environments always have high turnover, low productivity, and they're always struggling.
Yeah. Right. There's a cost, and you might be getting paid more financially, but there's a toll on maybe your health or your time or your family or et cetera. Yes. Now, competing in a price-driven, commoditized market is tough. How do you create differentiation when the product itself isn't unique?
I think that's hard to do, but it can be done. A lot of things are hard to do, but can be done. And so for us at Eckert Machining, there's not a lot that separates us. We're doing what a lot of our competitors can do, and we don't have something that readily differentiates us from our competition. So we do have a plan for that. We don't consider hope a strategy. So we do have a multi-generational plan. We do have a business plan, and we are adhering to that and making adjustments as we go. So what we focus on is making our customers feel important, being responsive to those customers. If there is a problem, and occasionally there is, there's a defect that was shipped in or something, we respond rapidly. We get over there, pick up the parts, we apologize, we bring them back, and we find a way to address those parts right away and show the customer we're serious about giving them our support. So we do that. We try to collaborate with our customers on keeping cost at a minimum. When something's over-engineered, we approach them And most customers are approachable, but not all. And so we approach them and say, hey, can we talk about this part? This feature is very difficult and costly. I think we have a suggestion, and are you open to that? So we try to collaborate with our customers, and with some customers it goes really well, and they appreciate that, and then you earn the respect of their engineers, etc. And so we bring that to the table. We bring our manufacturing expertise to the table, and we have customers. We're based in San Jose, California, and we have customers in Houston, New York, Oregon. So, we reach out, and those customers, they come to us, even though it's quite a distance, because we collaborate with them, and that's what they were looking for. But again, not all customers are like that. Some customers just don't talk to us, just send us your parts.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, but I'm really hearing, yeah, you're focusing on customer relationships, customer service, and just really going above and beyond to provide, a quality experience. And that definitely can, set you apart. I mean, if you're easier to work with, if you're there and you're transparent and sounding like you're really committed to providing transparency and good experience when they're working with your company, I mean, I think that is a huge opportunity and advantage, competitive advantage, even though your products themselves might be, more of a commodity. But yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And we always face that competition where if we're making something and the volume gets high enough, they start to look for low-cost centers to go to overseas. That's always frustrating to deal with, and a whole subject all on its own. But we try to engage with our customers and offer something different in terms of customer service and the level of collaboration, engineering collaboration. But at the same time, we recognize that we are going to need something even more different. So part of our business plan is to create that financial engine that puts us in a position to invest in the latest technology. That includes automation, robotic automation, different types of machining, because we mostly focus on precision machining. But these days, the technology of machining shifts rapidly. So we're looking to position ourselves to upgrade our technology. So that brings you right back to, it's a business. You need to make money so you can invest, not just in people, but in equipment. So it's never easy.
So finally, for leaders facing deep resistance or fatigue in their organizations, what advice would you give them about staying the course and leading with integrity?
I think don't overreact. Don't take it personal. So when somebody criticizes you, you should know that's coming. Once you step into the leadership light, let's say, keep your compass pointing in the right direction and be aware. Don't step into the light unless you're ready to accept criticism. You are going to be under the microscope, and in the beginning, especially in that forming and storming phase, you're going to be hit with a lot of criticism. And some of it may sound personal in nature. Don't take it personal. You've got to be strong enough to understand it's not you, it's your position and what you represent that people are attacking. So I think that the most important thing a leader can do is accept that and stay focused on doing the right things and behave in the right way, be sincere and authentic. Integrity is irreplaceable. Respect is the key to leading change. Create respect with your employees, even when you know as soon as the conversation's over, they're probably going to gather other friends to say what a jerk you are. Don't be that jerk. Just keep doing the right thing. And eventually people will come around. And you need to create that environment where people will follow you so you can deliver change. Use the tools.
I think that's, yeah, really good advice, though, not taking things personally, learning to listen to people, no matter what they're saying. It's really about pain that they're experiencing, right? So it's like, it's never really actually about you. It's about what they are struggling with. And if you can learn to listen with their perspective, in mind, listening from their point of view and not taking it personally, then I think that's where real connection can be made. And that's where they really feel heard as well when you don't. And it's not easy. I get that. It can feel, I think that as humans, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we tend to get defensive. We tend to protect ourselves. And if we can learn, though, to shift that into, okay, what are they going through? What are they experiencing? How can I, understand where they're at and then do something to, shift that? Then we get
Right.
further.
You phrase that perfectly. It's about, being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. What does it feel like for them? And recognize that and then take action appropriately. Listening skills are very rare. I think we listen at 400 words a minute, and we can talk at like 125 words a minute. That's called the listening differential. And it's the reason why people, when they're in a conversation, are already getting ready to say what they want to say rather than listening to what the other person is saying. And then, because they're so anxious to share, and they're listening at that 400 words a minute, and they want you to finish so they can say what they want to say. So that listening differential, understanding that's a good one. And as leaders, we've got to look into the leadership mirror, reflect upon what you've done. Don't defend the indefensible. Accept responsibility when things go wrong. Own it. Own it. Don't blame people. Don't ask who did this, who did that. Go and own it yourself and find out what you can do to help that person.
Right. Because I think that's when leaders are actually most respected at the same time, when we do own the problems or what's been created. Because even though we might not, individually have created the problem, as the leader, we're still responsible for the problem and, creating a solution. So owning it, I think, is the strongest thing you can do, really.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. If you're at the top of the tree or wherever you are on that tree, everything beneath you you're responsible for. You own it. You own it. So behave like you own it.
Yeah, behave, and it's not until you own it that you can actually do something about it, like from a place of power too, because otherwise you don't believe there's a problem. You're like, oh well, I didn't do that. That's not my fault.
When you look at your team, I think it helps to recognize if you can put yourself as a servant leader, that doesn't mean you're a doormat, but you're there to make people successful. You're there to get the best out of people. You're a coach, a leader, and a manager. All those things combined. And there is a toolbox to use. You don't have to make this stuff up. People much smarter than us figured this out a long time ago. And we can borrow from them, put our own twist on it, and put it into good use. And even people that you wouldn't socialize with, they can still be great assets to you. The chemistry is always different. You may have vastly different political views or whatever it might be, but that doesn't come into it. It's not personal. And don't take it personal. And your job is to get the best out of that person, even if it's somebody that you think, man, I would not socialize with this person.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Very, very good advice. Yeah. Well, Andy, thank you for sharing your journey, your insights, and the powerful reminder that culture is not soft, it's strategic. Now, for listeners who want to learn more about Eckert Machining and leadership philosophy or your work in organizational transformation, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Well, my contact information is on LinkedIn. It's open to everybody. I'm open to being called, emailed, contacted in any way. I love to help people. I'm available to do that.
All right. And what's your website?
It's emiprecision.com.
All right. Well, thank you again. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and tune in to the next conversation. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry.